Welcome to Spiritual Calisthenics. Christ is in our midst. On March 18th, we commemorate St. Cyril, Patriarch of Jerusalem, St. Trophimos and St. Eukarpion, Monk-martyrs of Nicomedea, and St. Edward the Martyr, King of England. Regarding St. Cyril, this saint was born in 315 and succeeded Maximus as Archbishop of Jerusalem in 350. He was zealous for the Orthodox faith and was a defender of the poor. He was exiled 3 times by the Arian emperors Constantius and Valens, but after their deaths he was recalled to his throne. He reposed in peace in 386. Of his writings, the most prominent are his catechetical lectures, which are considered the most ancient systematic summary of Christian teaching. Before St. Cyril, there have been 2 dioceses, one of Jerusalem and one of Holy Sion. Under St. Cyril, they were united into one bishopric. A model of faith in the image of gentleness, the example of your life has shown you forth to your sheepfold to be a master of temperance. You obtained thus to being lowly gifts from on high, and riches to poverty. Cyril, our Father, and priest of priests, intercede with Christ our God that he may save our souls. St. Edward the Martyr, King of England. St. Edward the Martyr was King of England from 975 until he was murdered in 978. Edward was the eldest son of King Edgar the Peaceful, but was not his father's acknowledged heir. On Edgar's death, the leadership of England was contested, with some supporting Edward's claim to be king, and others supporting his much younger half-brother, Aelfred, the Unready, he recognized as a legitimate son of Edgar. Edward was chosen as king, and was crowned by his main clerical supporters, the archbishops Saints Dunstan and Oswald of Worcester. King Edward was a young man of great devotion and excellent conduct. He was completely orthodox, good, and of holy life. Moreover, he loved God and the church above all things. He was generous to the poor, a haven to the good, a champion of the faith of Christ, a vessel full of every virtuous grace. On King Edward's ascension to the throne, a great famine was raging through the land, and violent attacks were stirred up against monasteries by prominent noblemen who coveted the lands that his father King Edgar had endowed to them. Many of these monasteries were destroyed, and the monks forced to flee. The king, however, stood firm together with Archbishop Dunstan in the defense of the church and the monasteries. For this, some of the nobles decided to remove him and replace him with his younger brother, Aelfred. The great nobles of the kingdom, Ealdormore, Aelfred, and Aelfwine, quarreled and civil war almost broke out. In a so-called anti-monastic reaction, the nobles took advantage of Edward's weakness to dispossess the Benedictine Reformed monasteries of the land and other properties that King Edgar had granted to them. Edward's short reign was brought to an end by his murder at Corfe Castle in 978, in circumstances that Shaftesbury Abbey early in 1979. In 1001, Edward's remains were moved to a more prominent place in the abbey, probably the blessing of his half-brother King Aelfred. Edward was already reckoned a saint by this time. A number of lives of Edward were written in the centuries following his death, in which he was portrayed as a martyr, generally seen as a victim of the Queen of Dowager Ethelfrith, mother of Aelfred. Immediately following the murder of King Edward during a hunting trip, his body slipped from the saddle of his horse and was dragged with one foot in the stirrup until the body fell into a stream at the base of the hill upon which Corfe Castle stands. The stream was found thereafter to have healing properties, particularly for the blind. The queen then ordered that the body be hurriedly hidden in a hut nearby. Within the hut, however, lived a woman who was blind from birth and whom the queen supported out of charity. During the night, a wonderful light appeared and filled the whole hut. Struck with awe, the woman cried out, "Lord, have mercy," and suddenly received her sight. At this, she discovered the dead body of the king. The church of St. Edward of Corfe Castle now stands on the site of this miracle. At dawn, the queen learned of the miracle and was troubled. Again, she ordered the disposal of the body, this time by burying it in a marshy place near Warheim. A year after the murder, however, a pillar of fire was seen over the place where the body was hidden, lighting up the whole area. This was seen by some of the inhabitants of Wareham, who raised the body. Immediately, a clear spring of healing water sprang up in that place, accompanied by what was now a huge crowd of mourners. The body was taken to the Church of the Most Holy Mother of God in Wareham and buried at the east of the church. This took place on February 13th, 980. On the account of a series of subsequent miracles, the relics were translated to the Abbey of Shaftesbury. Where the relics were taken up from the grave, they were found to be whole and incorrupt. The translation of the relics on February 13th, 981 was arrived at Shaftesbury 7 days later. The relics were received by the nuns of Shaftesbury Abbey and were buried with full royal honors on the north side of the altar. On the way from Wareham to Shaftesbury, a further miracle had taken place. 2 crippled men were brought close to the bier, and those carrying it lowered the body to their level, whereupon the cripples were immediately restored to full health. This procession and these events were reenacted 1,000 years later in 1981. In 1001, the tomb in which the saints lay was observed to regularly rise from the ground. King Elthred was filled with joy at this and instructed the bishops to raise his brother's tomb from the ground and place it in a more fitting place. As the tomb was opened, a wonderful fragrance issued from it, such that all present thought that they were standing in paradise. The bishops then bore away the sacred relics from the tomb and placed them in a casket in the holy place of the saints, together with the other holy relics. This elevation of the relics of St. Edward's took place on June 20th, 1001. St. Edward was officially canonized in 1008. From the prophecy of Isaiah.
Thus says the Lord, and all the people will know, Ephraim and the inhabitants of Samaria, who say in pride and in arrogance of heart, the bricks have fallen, but we will build with dressed stones. The sycamores have been cut down, but we will put cedars in their place. So the Lord raises adversaries against them and stirs up their enemies. The Syrians on the east and the Philistines on the west devour Israel with open mouth. For all this his anger is not turned away, and his hand is stretched out still. The people did not turn to him who smote them, nor seek the Lord of hosts. So the Lord cut off from Israel head and tail, palm branch and reed in one day. The elder and honored man is the head, and the prophet who teaches lies is the tail. For those who lead this people lead them astray, and those who are led by them are swallowed up. Therefore the Lord does not rejoice over their young men, and has no compassion on their fatherless and widows. For everyone is godless and an evildoer, and every mouth speaks folly. For all this his anger is not turned away, and his hand is stretched out still. For wickedness burns like a fire, it consumes briars and thorns. It kindles the thickets of the forest, and they roll upward in a column of smoke. Through the wrath of the Lord of hosts the land is burned, and the people are like fuel for the fire. No man spares his brother. They snatch on the right, but are still hungry, and they devour on the left, but are not satisfied. Each devours his neighbor's flesh, Manasseh, Ephraim, and Ephraim, Manasseh, and together they are against Judah. For all this his anger is not turned away, and his hand is stretched out still. Woe to those who decree iniquitous decrees, and the writers who keep writing oppression, to turn aside the needy from justice, and to rob the poor of my people of their right, that widows may be their spoil, and that they may make the fatherless their prey. What will you do on the day of punishment, in the storm which will come from afar? To whom will you flee for help, and where will you leave your wealth? Nothing remains but to crouch among the prisoners, or fall among the slain. For all this his anger is not turned away, and his hand is stretched out still.
Once again, it is focusing on the people that have turned away from God and how they will fall into ruin because God's wrath is upon those that are unrighteous. From the book of Genesis. Then the Lord said to Noah, Go into the ark, you and all your household, for I have seen that you are righteous before me in this generation. Take with you 7 pillars of all clean animals, the male and his mate, and a pair of the animals that are not clean, the male and his mate, and 7 pairs of the birds of the air also, male and female, to keep their kind alive upon the face of all the earth. For in 7 days I will send rain upon the earth for 40 days and 40 nights, and every living thing that I have made I will blot out from the face of the ground. And Noah did all that the Lord had commanded him. Now, you notice here that this is very similar to earlier in Genesis, in which there were multiple creation stories. And so this is, again, something that is trying to focus on different aspects. It's the same story, but a little different nuance. The 7 pillars can represent the 7 churches, the 7 days of the week of completion, that the idea of this is holy, that what God is making into the ark. And this is important because what is the church? The church is the ark of salvation, that within the church we are saved. From the book of Proverbs. And now, my sons, listen to me. Happy are those who do keep my ways. Hear instruction and be wise and do not neglect it. Happy is the man who listens to me, watching daily at my gates, waiting beside my doors. For he who finds me finds life and obtains favor from the Lord. But he who misses me injures himself. All who hate me love death. Wisdom has built her house. She has set her up her 7 pillars. Once again, we see the 7 pillars. She has slaughtered her beast. He has mixed her wine. She has also set her table. She has sent out her maids to call from the highest place in the town. Whoever is simple, let him turn in here. To him who is without sense, she says, Come, Eat of my bread and drink of the wine I have mixed. Leave simpleness and live, and walk in the way of insight. He who corrects a scoffer gets himself abuse, and he who reproves a wicked man incurs injury. Do not reprove a scoffer, or he will hate you. Reprove a wise man, and he will love you. Give us instruction to a wise man, and he will be still wiser. Teach a righteous man, and he will increase in learning. This is one of my favorite verses from Proverbs. I'll say it again. He who corrects a scoffer gets himself abuse, and he who reproves a wicked man incurs injuries. In other words, when we tell somebody that they're doing something wrong, they're not going to listen. They're just going to get angry. However, reprove a wise man, and he will love you, someone that is able to take constructive criticism. Give instruction to a wise man, and he will be wiser still. Teach a righteous man, and he will increase in learning. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is insight. For by me your days will be multiplied, and years will be added to your life. I hope that you've enjoyed today's Spiritual Calisthenics. Have a blessed and wonderful day.